Hey everybody, it's Professor Diffley. This is Module 2, History 114, Module 2, Lecture Video 2. So we were left off talking about culture, and I gave the example of the, the bald eagle and how it could have different meanings depending on what you were taught, right? Because culture is taught. And there are other examples too. I want to give you another example here. The Southern Cross, a constellation, as how it's viewed in Australia today and historically. What is, this is a cultural symbols example, the Southern Cross constellation. You can see it there on the right. It's these four stars right around here, this is sometimes known as the Crux or the Southern Cross. Now, thing is, culture has a significant impact on what we see, how we interpret what we see out there in the world, what we think, what we make of events or just natural phenomena. So, looking at that, you see a cross, right? Or at least that's what some do. But here's the thing, it wasn't always viewed that way. For the Aborigines, the native peoples of Australia, they're a very diverse group, but the Aborigines, that's what they're called there, they never saw this as representing a cross, right? To them, this is not a cross. Now, why? Why did they not see a cross? Well, who did see a cross? That's another question, too. It's not until the Europeans, especially the English, who end up settling and colonizing Australia, they see it as they begin to, after the end of the 15th century and on, venture into the southern hemisphere, they begin to see this constellation. They look up and see a cross. I should have said that earlier. Why the Southern Cross? This is not visible from where we are in the northern hemisphere. This is only something you can see in the southern hemisphere. It is not visible. It's only when you get south of the equator can you see this, right? Just like the people who live in the southern hemisphere cannot see the North Star, right? So this is something that's only seen in the southern hemisphere. So again, the Aborigines did not see a cross. The Europeans did. Why? They looked up. They were Christians, and a cross is a symbol of Christianity. And so that's what they saw. They gave meaning to this random grouping of stars that happen to look like this just from our perspective on this rock that we're on in space, right? It could look different from, if there's another planet out there in another part of the galaxy or that, it would look different. But that's besides the point. But that's what they looked up, the Europeans. Now, what did the Aborigines see? Well, it depended on where they were from. Aborigines living on the coast of Australia, when they looked up at this and saw a stingray, the body of a stingray, right? Why, if you connected the three stars at the top there, that would be like a ray's body, a stingray's body. And it is, roughly a sort of a triangle shape. Now, remember one thing, whenever you're looking up at constellations, you got to use your imagination, right? To make them, to see what they were seeing. Interesting side note on this, humans started naming constellations at the exact same moment they invented alcohol. Not even kidding about that. First invention of wine, people started looking up and naming the stars and what they look like. So again, use your imagination in some of this. But again, so the people living on the coast see a stingray. Why do they see a stingray? Guess what they saw a lot were stingrays, right? They lived in tropical waters. They saw these animals all the time, and they have significance to some of the groups that live there. Now, if you go inland, away from the coast, other Aborigine groups looked up at this and didn't see a stingray or a cross. They saw kangaroo tracks in the sky, right? Kangaroo tracks. Well, that is something they saw. Why? Well, the stingray, either for the stingray, it had some cultural, religious, and other importance. For the kangaroo, Aborigines who see a kangaroo, it does have to do with some of their culture and their origin stories, but it's also a source of food. And kangaroo and out that, and like in the desert and the outback in Australia, could also lead you to water, right? Animals will know where it is. So again, what explains the differences in what they all see? Why does one see an aquatic animal, one see a kangaroo, and one see a cross representing their religion? What's the difference? Their cultures, right? What they were taught, what's important to them, that thing. So here, this is an example. And it does kind of look like kangaroo tracks. Kangaroo tracks on the left, that's an actual one on a beach. It almost looks like a J and an L, right? Written there. Now, that's my bad hand drawing over the constellation there. When they looked up, they connected, some Aborigine groups connected the Southern Cross stars in that way, right? So to them, this is not even anything close to a cross. Again, but this is what culture is about. So culture is learned, that sort of thing. And it is really dependent on, can be dependent on place, right? These are dependent on place, whether it's a kangaroo or a stingray. Others can be on belief systems, like again, when you look up and see a cross, a symbol of your religion. Those could be the differences. Moving on. So what is a society then? So we talked about culture. What's society? It's a group of interacting organisms. Everything, animals, ants have a society, bees have a society, right? They're interacting together. For humans, these are, it goes beyond just that. It's a group of people who directly or indirectly interact with each other. So in American society, it's everybody in the United States of America. We all interact either directly or indirectly. Well, how do you indirectly, interact with people? Right. Well, somebody, say someone grew the food or something like that, and you bought it. You're never going to see them, but you are interacting with them indirectly, right? So, but that's what it is, a society, a group there together. One thing that's shown is human societies also perceive their society as distinct from the other ones in shared traditions and expectations. So society and culture are part of that too. They can go together, but they do begin to see their society as different, right? Think about this. Who can call themselves an American? Well, technically everybody from Canada all the way down to Argentina. Why? They all live in the Americas, right? Either North, Central, or South America. But if you say America, you say you're an American, you're talking about, think about that. When you say American, are you thinking someone from Brazil, a Canadian, Mexican? What are you thinking? Probably somebody from the United States, right? So that's how a society can view itself as distinct, different from, and collective, together in those bounds there. So other terms that come up here, especially in the beginning, kinship, clans, and tribes is some of these. Well, what is kinship? Kinship traditionally denotes familial relationships, right? Not just your immediate family, but your extended family, right? So your kin is your relatives, right? It can be blood relatives or not. And what I mean is if an aunt or an uncle who married into the family, they're still kin, but there's no actual, genetic, and that's what I mean by blood. There's no genetic relationship, but they're still part of your family, right? So that's what a kinship is. Kinship network is, going, the connections you have amongst those people. So what is a clan? It's often sometimes called a band. Here in the groups, we're going to talk about clans. Were very popular in some of the Iroquois cultures that interacted with the groups here in the CT Valley. To them, it's a kinship grouping made of two or more maternal longhouses, which are families, and we'll get into longhouses later, right? Going back to a common female ancestry. And that's something you're going to notice about Native Americans. They were matrilineal. Families trace their heritage back using the mother's line, right? So it would almost be like a tradition in the West, in America, is when people get married, a man and woman get married, they take the husband's name. Not everybody does, but that would be a patrilineal line. They were matrilineal there. So, a clan is, people consider as related to other members of the clan, even those from other nations, right? But really, a clan is really, again, your really extended family, right? It could be, so like I use the aunt or uncle that married into your family. Well, in a clan, you could also say now you're part of their family, right? Because you're a relative, genetic relative married into their family. And so that would be a clan. So in many ways, a clan is a group of families, right? And that's really what it is. And that's where it goes into a tribe or as a nation, as Native Americans used it. A tribe or a nation, tribe can mean different things in many places, but a tribe is usually a collection of clans, right? A collection of a bunch of different families who bind together. And they usually share social, cultural, and political commonalities, right? So they're all part of that, and they see themselves as really being connected under that, a nation, a group of people distinct from everybody else based on those things. So, and there's other terms here, matrilocal. I talked about matrilineal. Again, matrilineal is following the tracing a family's line back through the mother side. Matrilocal is related to that. In matrilocal societies, residence is determined by the women's lines. In European and early American traditions, usually a man and a woman get married. The woman goes and lives with the man and his family, right? That goes all the way back to the Romans, the Greeks, the the Germanic groups, you called the barbarians back then. That's how that worked. But in the Americas, especially in the Northeast, what is now the United States, what we'd say is New England, and especially among the Iroquois and others, excuse me, you went and lived with the mother's family there. So husbands moved in with the wife's family that way. And again, it depended at times, right? So Algonquin ones, which the groups around the Connecticut Valley were much related to, it depended, right? During planting times, you might live with the female family side. Why? Well, women are going to have a large role in the agriculture there. And then when it's hunting season, maybe the family would shift to the father's side family. Why? Because men had a more of a role in hunting and that. And again, then go back and forth between several places of residence, depending on seasons, that sort of thing. Okay, so some ending terms here. So nomadic versus semi-nomadic. So these are some terms especially applied to the Native American groups are here. And there is a difference. As you can see, there's a similarity in the names, but let's start with nomadic, and this will be, well, what's the difference between the two? Nomadics. And to be a nomad, this is constantly moving. No permanent residence. You're always moving. The group is always moving. There is no permanent home. They go wherever the food and resources are, right? On the seasons, availability of food, following herds, that sort of thing. Again, it can move across great distances. And those were early Native Americans, something that's an era called the Paleo Indians. They were always moving, following the herds everywhere. The other is semi-nomadic, and this is more like what the Native Americans, at least in this region of New England, were like in the Connecticut River Valley at the time. By the time the Europeans came over beginning colonization. Again, there is no true permanent one residence, right? They don't just live in one specific spot, like we would say, you're a resident of Springfield, of whatever town you're in. They move again with the seasons and availability of food, but within a defined geographic area, right? So the semi-nomadics are people that move with the seasons or for the resources, but within a specific area, defined geographic area with boundaries. Almost like a circuit. This is Native Americans in the Connecticut River Valley. Groups would move throughout the year with the seasons, ranging as far south sometimes as Enfield, what's Enfield, Connecticut, all the way up to Turner's Falls, Massachusetts, depending on the availability of food and things like that. And so that is really the difference. Nomads are constantly move across great distances, always on the search for food. Semi-nomads move within a specific area. Okay, and so we'll pick up video 3 here with the origins of humans in America. So again, we'll end there and pick up next. All right. Thanks.